back again with another review, and today we're going to talk about 3, the Dale Earnhardt story. Now, first off, I'm not the biggest NASCAR guy. I'm just not a big NASCAR fan. But I know recently, it had been 20 years since the passing of Dale Earnhardt. Now, there might be some people that are a little bit younger that watch my videos may not know who Dale Earnhardt is. But during the 90s, he was NASCAR's biggest driver. What Michael Jordan is to the Bulls, Dale Earnhardt was to NASCAR. And I remember back in the late 90s, even at a young age, I didn't watch NASCAR. I had family members that did. And I remember Dale Earnhardt. And of course, other drivers at that time, like a Jeff Gordon, what have you. But, Dale Earnhardt was NASCAR's biggest star. And unfortunately, in February of 2001, he crashed into this wall in the final lap of the Daytona 500 and lost his life. And you want to talk about a big deal, when that happened. Like, I still remember that like it was yesterday. I mean, it is such a loss for the sport, even though I'm not a big fan. Like, I'm not a fan of NASCAR. But, I mean, it just felt like, even then, being 11 years old when that happened, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's like, imagine, and I don't want to say this, or it's like, imagine if Michael Jordan, if he passed or something like that. And I know for a lot of fans, of the sport of NASCAR, that they feel that the sport hasn't really been the same since. And that's what I've seen from interviews and stuff. Like, well, it had been 2 decades since his passing, and I've went back and looked at the events of that day, interviews with drivers that knew Dale Earnhardt, and it seems like a lot of the fans, I read some of the feedback underneath these videos and interviews, and a lot of people say that since Dale Earnhardt passed, NASCAR hasn't been the same, even though they implemented all these safety measures, because since then it hasn't been, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but from what I understand, since Dale Earnhardt's death, unfortunate death, they wanted to make sure that nobody else dies in the sport. So they implemented all these safety measures, and I'm not all too familiar with, the safety measures that they implemented, but they wanted to make sure that this doesn't happen again. That, this doesn't happen again in the sport, because Dale Earnhardt was such a big deal. And yeah, I mean, like I said, being 20 years now, it made me want to go back and revisit this film, which this film was actually made by ESPN. This is a TV movie. And I remember watching this when it premiered, because, the story was interesting. And, the events of what happened was still fresh. But I wanted to see the film. I remember ESPN had made this movie, and it's a biographical TV movie where Barry Pepper plays Dale Earnhardt. And Barry Pepper is a guy that you've seen before in other movies. Good support. He's one of those actors that whenever you see him, he does good. He was in The Green Mile. He was in Saving Private Ryan. The True Grit remake. And I like Barry Pepper. And he does a really good job here. And directed by Russell Mulcahy. Yeah. I'm like, Russell Mulcahy directed this? Yeah, same guy that directed Highlander and Highlander 2. Before that, Razorback. And I know lately Russell Mulcahy's working on a lot of TV Like he directed some stuff like the Teen Wolf series, some recent show, 13 Reasons Why, which I've heard about but haven't seen. But I know he's working on that. And he's also directed some music videos. Back in the day, he directed, music videos for Duran Duran, the song "Hungry Like a Wolf," and "Total Eclipse of the Heart." Did the music video for that by Bonnie Tyler. He directed that. So he's directed a lot of different things in his career, movie-wise, TV stuff. Tales from the Crypt. I think he directed some episodes of that, along with some music videos. So Russell Mulcahy, and then there's other movies too. I think he also directed Silent Trigger with Dolph Lundgren. So he's had a really interesting career. And I do like Russell Mulcahy. Now Ricochet with Denzel, he directed that. So I'm like, Russell Mulcahy directed this. Interesting. And, as a whole, when I look at the film, to me it's a solid TV movie. I understand for, like more diehard NASCAR fans, this film is kind of compressed because of, not everything is covered in terms of Dale's life. And that's a tendency with TV movies, is that it's always, okay, we don't have enough time, let's get in what we can get in, for a TV movie, that there's going to be points where it's not going to be 100% factual. And again, that's a tendency with these movies, a lot of TV movies, especially biographical. Like, okay, I do like the Three Stooges movie, the TV movie that came out back in 2000. I think with that, there were some moments that were true, but, and again, with movies like this, they do take some liberties, but I think for the most part, and this is coming from somebody that I don't know his whole life story, but for what this film did, I thought, again, it was a solid TV movie. Again, it's a biographical look at Dale Earnhardt. In the beginning, you see his upbringing, and his father is played by J.K. Simmons. Yeah, from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Then I do like J.K. Simmons. So they do touch on sort of the father and son relationship, that his father worked at a cotton mill, and at the same time he, raced at the dirt tracks, dirt racing, whatever, I don't know what you would call it. But, his father looked at his son, thinking, okay, what are you going to do with your life? Or racing, you're never going to be a great racer. But Dale Earnhardt is set on proving his father wrong, and wants to follow that passion. He wants to be a great racer and follow his dad's footsteps. And he's like, I'm going to show you. And there's even a line in here in the film that I thought was really good, where his father would talk to Dale, and Dale's father says, because I think Dale Earnhardt was talking about winning, and his father says, the winner isn't the man with the faster car. It is the man that refuses to lose. And I thought it was a good quote in the film. But, yeah, so that was a good moment. But Dale Earnhardt, he had a certain... Okay, for example, there's a moment in here where he wins a race, kind of playing dirty a little bit. And if this is... I don't know how much of this is true, but, after the race, he's being chased by a guy with a gun. A guy with a gun is chasing after him, and Dale Earnhardt, runs out the track, runs out into the woods, to where he's picked up. So I guess, back in the day, if you did certain tricks, or, if you try to do something in the race to the other driver, they would get pissed off and try to start fights, or a knife would be, you would probably have a confrontation. Other drivers would get, take out a knife, take out a gun, and go after you. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that really happened or not, but I thought it was a funny moment, where a guy is chasing after Dale Earnhardt with a gun. But, it kind of, again, touches on his upbringing. Meanwhile, Dale Earnhardt's, winning some races, and his father dies of a heart attack. They touch on that. And they touch on some of Dale Earnhardt's early marriages, that it just didn't work out because his heart was set on racing. Like, he knew where his heart was, that his heart was set on racing, and that, he was trying to get more money and trying to, this was his passion, and he wanted to provide, but, people just, with his previous marriages, didn't work out. And like I said, it kind of goes more into his wins in the 80s, and his son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., he comes into the picture here for a little bit in the film, and it's kind of getting into the second half, where, again, it touches on his wins in the 80s and then a little bit in the 90s. And so I would say more so the first half, again, it's about his upbringing. The second half is about, his wins and, him becoming NASCAR's biggest driver, the franchise, and the Intimidator, again, which was his nickname. His wins at Daytona, Daytona 98, which I don't remember, or I want to say maybe I remember that a little bit. But he had won that, and that was a big deal. And then, like I said, unfortunately, in February of 2001, his last, the final lap of the race, where I think Michael Waltrip was in first, and then his son was in second, and Dale was coming in third, I believe. And, something happened where he kind of lost control and veered off into the wall. And, from the looks of it, you're thinking, okay, he's going to be okay, because Dale Earnhardt, from what I understand, he's survived worse. I mean, there's been worse collisions, worse, crashes. You're thinking, okay, he just hit the wall. And I remember, like, a lot of people thought that, there's no way, because, when you go back and look at the crash, the collision, that, okay, he's going to be okay. This is nothing. He'll be all right. He'll walk out. But unfortunately, he lost his life. And, at 49 years old. And they don't really show the crash, but what they do is they kind of show a little bit of what happened, and just as he's about to hit the wall, the scene cuts back to his childhood, where his father picks up little Dale Earnhardt as a boy. He picks him up, and that's where the film ends. So, I get that, why the film wanted to end that way and not, show the actual collision, the crash. So I get that. But when I look at the performances here, Barry Pepper, again, I thought he did a really good job as Dale Earnhardt. And again, Barry Pepper is one of those actors that I do like whenever he, shows up in the film, as a supporting player or, some kind of bit role. I always like Barry Pepper. You also have Elizabeth Mitchell in here, I believe is her name. I know she was in Frequency with Dennis Quaid. Yeah, Elizabeth Mitchell, who plays Teresa, his wife. I don't know who played Dale Earnhardt Jr., but something that something that had caught my attention, looking on Wikipedia, I was looking at the cast, and apparently, like, I don't know if, I'll talk about this in a second, but apparently Jeff Gordon, of course, you have him in the film, and guess who plays Jeff Gordon? Andrew Garfield. Yeah, this is back in 2004. I'm like, Andrew Garfield is in the movie? I don't remember seeing him, but he plays Jeff Gordon. Yeah, Andrew Garfield is somewhere in this movie, so I don't know if he had a scene and maybe it was cut, but he plays Jeff Gordon. I don't remember seeing Jeff Gordon in the film, unless I looked away for a second. But yeah, Andrew Garfield is in the movie. Interesting. And the thing is with this movie, and it kind of goes to what I know some of the fans, when they mention this film, or whenever this film is brought up, that this is more of a compressed version of his life, that it feels kind of rushed. And I understand that. And again, that's kind of a tendency with TV movies, that, it tends to, give you, the nutshell version, or, let's get what we can get in there for 90 minutes. And yeah, we're not going to touch on everything 100%. Like, from what I understand, Dale Earnhardt loved hunting. He loved fishing. And he was a very competitive person. Even outside of NASCAR, he was a very competitive person. And so there's different aspects which they don't touch on 100%. And I'm sure it does feel in parts edited. Like it seems like there was more there that they trend back on, or it was edited for time, edited for, and okay, because we know this is a TV movie, we can't get everything in there. So there are some parts in here because of and you can definitely see it in the editing. Like it'll say, okay, 1978, and then like quickly a scene later, oh, it's 1981, and then 5 minutes later, it's 1988. So it does feel like at times maybe it was a little bit too trimmed up. But I felt for what this film did, I thought it told a good story. I felt it was a good, solid story. Russell Mulcahy, again, I like as a director. Highlander's a classic. And it's interesting that, because when his name popped up, I'm like, Russell Mulcahy directed this? Okay. And like I said, nowadays he's working on a lot of TV stuff. But he's definitely had an interesting career. Maybe I would have said that, I think at the end of the day, I would like to have seen whatever they took out, put back in. I think it would have helped a little bit. Maybe, so what if it was, 10, 15 minutes longer, I think it would have helped out the film. It feels like maybe it was too edited down at points. Like I would have said, okay, if there's one thing if there was a nitpick, I would say, put whatever you took out, like, back in. Because it's a good story. So at the end of the day, I would say it's a solid, good biographical TV movie. And I understand that maybe at points it kind of takes that conventional route of being, because of it, it's a TV movie. But Barry Pepper, he's one thing that, to me, he did a really good job as Dale Earnhardt. And he really keeps the film together. I mean, the rest of the cast, you recognize Elizabeth Mitchell, but there's not a whole lot to the cast. J.K. Simmons is good. He's good support. But there's not a lot of people that you recognize. And again, I don't know, where was Jeff Gordon in this film? That Andrew Garfield played Jeff Gordon. I'm like, I totally missed that. Unless I, again, looked away, or maybe I was texting or what have you. But yeah, so at the end of the day, and this is a 2-disc collector's edition. There's a decent documentary up here about Dale Earnhardt. I watched one on YouTube that talks about, what happened that the Daytona 500 back in 2001, the events of that. And there's some other docs out there. But this one, The Life and Legacy of Dale Earnhardt, I thought it was a decent documentary. It talks about, his wins and stuff and some of his life. Again, it was a decent doc. You do have a making of up here, the film. So, again, it's a good 2-disc special edition or a collector's edition. But yeah, I would say give this a watch. I mean, if anything, for Barry Pepper's performance, I thought he did a really good job. And while it may have its moments where, okay, it's a TV movie, so you kind of get the conventional sort of direction of it. But I thought it was a good story. So, yeah. 3, the Dale Earnhardt story. Again, a solid TV movie. But that's my review of that. Thank you for watching. And stay tuned for more.